I'm Jeff Mazur, Executive Director of LaunchCode. I'm excited to talk with you today about developing a skilled technology workforce. My organization, LaunchCode, is a nonprofit whose mission is focused on filling the tech talent gap. In our years of doing that work, we've learned lots of great lessons from companies that are doing great innovative things in the tech workforce space. We're excited to share with you today some of those lessons. Let's go ahead and jump in. Now, the first question you may be asking is finding tech talent even still a problem given our current economic moment? Obviously, we're in the midst of a very challenging, turbulent time for business. And the COVID-related economic downturn has impacted hiring generally, including hiring for technology roles. But it hasn't eliminated the problem of the tech hiring gap. The numbers tell us as much. The slide you're looking at here shows us CompTIA's tech hiring report for September 2020. You'll see that in May of this year, the overall unemployment rate was over 13%, while the rate for IT occupations was just 3.7%. In the intervening months, the overall unemployment rate has dropped by almost another 5 percentage points. So while we don't have data yet, it's reasonable to assume that the rate for IT occupations is even lower. Also, CompTIA's report includes the fact that there were postings for roughly 220,000 IT job openings in May of 2020. So even while American unemployment was near its pandemic high water mark, there were still lots of tech positions waiting to be filled. The takeaway is this: while the pandemic has affected tech hiring on the margins, it has done nothing to erase the huge, long-standing structural challenges that our economy has faced for many years now with regard to the technology workforce. So what are those underlying structural challenges that have squeezed industry's ability to hire enough skilled technologists in recent years? I want to walk you through a few of them. A moment ago, we saw the big number of national IT job postings, 220,000. I also like to look at localized numbers as we examine and define the challenges. Here we see some numbers for the St. Louis region, which is home to LaunchCode. They give us a sense for one of the big drivers of the gap. The big number here, 10,400 plus, is the number of software applications developer job openings over 1 year's time in the St. Louis region, according to the Community College's 2019 State of the Workforce Report. That's a lot of open jobs. The other number, 609, that's the number of computer science degrees issued by four-year institutions that serve our region. When we consider those numbers, and that bachelor's programs in computer science have traditionally been one of the primary channels from which software developers are hired, one facet of the problem comes into relief. If even a quarter of those 10,000 open jobs are junior level roles, there are still about 4 times as many openings to be filled each year as there are candidates coming through the skilling pipeline that employers ordinarily rely on. Any successful approach to addressing the issue will have to be multifaceted, but a core premise will be finding ways to get people into these roles who've not had the educational or workplace experiences that have typically been required of people who do those jobs. So a little bit about why those numbers are the way they are. And it shouldn't be a surprise, it's cost. The left-hand bubble here shows the tuition-only costs of getting a 4-year degree. The low-end number is median tuition only for in-state rates at a public institution. The higher figure is median, again, tuition only, for 4 years at a private college or university. When you factor in fees and room and board, if it's a residential situation, you're quickly looking at $50,000 to $180,000 or more to earn that degree. In any moment, that's a lot of money, particularly in an era in which the challenges of younger workers of paying off student debt have become more acute and more visible. Now, the figure on the right shows the average cost of a coding boot camp according to the publication Course Report in 2019. Now, obviously, $13,000 is a lot less than the cost of a 4-year degree. But for the people who most need to be induced to step into tech careers if we're going to fill the gap, and that's those who lack resources for college, those who are already in debt, those who are entrenched in a cycle of low-wage employment, $13,000 is still a bridge too far. Now, we begin to understand why the costs of the dominant tech skilling models are a huge contributor to the tech hiring gap when we look at broad data about the financial and economic situation of Americans. Here, we see some numbers that Brookings released last winter, and I think they're pretty bracing. 44% of American workers aged 18 to 64 years are low-wage workers who earn an average hourly wage of just $10.22 an hour. That's an astounding 53 million Americans who are working to earn $18,000, $20,000, $21,000 a year. Those are poverty level wages. And that fact about the prevalence of low wage work contributes to the fact that a huge portion of Americans are very susceptible to what may seem to many of us like very small economic shocks. This remarkable statistic comes from the United States Federal Reserve from a report back in 2018. In that report, the Fed told us that a whopping 40% of Americans would struggle to come up with even $400 to pay for an unexpected bill. Now, we're not talking about 40% of workers aged 18 to 64 here. This is 40% of all Americans, or about 130 million people. All of a sudden, we have more context for why too few people are plunking down the $13,000 or $50,000 or $200,000 cash to earn the skills that industry wants. If 130 million Americans can't afford to replace the faulty brakes on their car, how can we expect they'll leverage themselves heavily to learn a new skill? So I think this is the right moment for me to talk briefly about my organization, LaunchCode. LaunchCode was created to address the problem that I discussed above. Our approach is to eliminate the barrier to access by providing high quality, job-focused training in computer programming for free. This gets talented, driven people into the game when paying for training would have kept them out. We also deliver the training in an accessible, part-time model so people don't have to give up their $10 an hour job in order to learn. Then we pay the costs of delivering that free training by acting as a talent guarantor for employers who provide revenue to LaunchCode for providing them with a steady, reliable, trained source of newly created tech talent through the graduates of our free programs. Obviously, as a small nonprofit, LaunchCode's work directly touches just a small corner of this industry-wide issue. But in the course of doing our work, we've been fortunate to work directly with or see from a distance a number of companies and employers that have adopted practices that are truly innovative ways of overcoming the tech talent hurdles I described before. And so I'm going to focus the rest of this conversation on sharing some specific examples of innovative approaches and practices that we've witnessed over our 7 years of existence. Where I can, I'll also try to distill those examples into broader theories or lessons that we think are more universally applicable, perhaps for you or your company. First lesson I want to share is this. Skills at hire are important. Skills at hire plus 1 year are more important. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, to put it a different way, one means of circumventing the skills access gap that I described relies on bringing people onto your team knowing they may lack the full range of skills needed for a job on day one, but confident they're the kind of people who will quickly and effectively learn the new skills or technologies that are needed. If we know the skilling universe is too constrained to ensure candidates are emerging with a full suite of necessary skills, forward-thinking firms with deep tech talent needs are going to work differently. They instead begin screening for and hiring for applicants who demonstrate an ability to learn quickly and an eager willingness to develop capacity in whatever new technology the employer points them toward. This is a particularly powerful model for companies that are growing quickly and that have an ever-expanding range of technologies in which they need talent. A great example of this we've seen has been the Centene Corporation. As Centene has experienced rapid growth and the corresponding need for tech talent, they've refined their junior hiring in a way that de-emphasizes the need for a highly articulated existing tech skill set. Instead, they often bring on groups of candidates who have a solid foundation in technical skills and who demonstrate a desire for and a comfort with jumping quickly into learning a new tech stack made up of whatever the company's needs may be. To use my own goofy biological analogy, I think of this as the stem cell approach. Human stem cells, of course, are cells with as yet undifferentiated purposes in the body. They transform into cells that can play the role of any other type of cell the body may need. By focusing on bringing in people to your organization who can quickly and ably build new technical competencies, you have human assets who can move into hard-to-fill roles as the company's needs change. Another good and slightly different example of this is something terrific that Emerson has been doing. Now, what you see here on this slide is a photo of my kitchen wall and my Sensi wireless connected thermostat. First thing I want you to notice is that my wife keeps the temp set way too high. 75 degrees. Are you kidding me? And there's also an image here of the Sensi app for my iPhone, from which I can control all the features of my thermostat from wherever I am. So what's this got to do with anything? Well, the Emerson team that manages this product and the application has adopted a talent approach that also helps mitigate the shortage of people coming from traditional tech skilling pathways. Specifically, they've begun hiring for this team in a way that reduces the requirement for existing skill and instead brings people in and puts them on a 6-month pathway with clearly articulated learning benchmarks. Meeting those benchmarks is a requirement for continuing in the role. It's a great way to ensure that Emerson gets the specific skills they need on a reasonably quick timeline, even when those skills may be in short supply in the hiring marketplace. And whatever they're doing is working, as it's keeping the temp in my house right where my wife set it. Which brings me to another lesson. Even for tech roles, non-technical skills and attributes are a key differentiator. Now, though many of us are keenly aware of the importance of what are sometimes referred to as soft skills in job readiness, and they certainly are important, those aren't really what I'm talking about here. For me, this lesson is about the convergence of a number of factors. One is that the aforementioned shortage of people coming from traditional skilling pipelines like degree programs. The second is that the baseline level of digital skills and digital exposure among the population at large and within the pool of job applicants is higher than it's ever been. And three, those two factors make it harder for hirers to differentiate candidates based entirely on their level of skill. And so for the savvy employer, identifying and hiring for other skills or attributes which track closely with someone's likely success in a tech job can be a great advantage. To illustrate this lesson, I want to point to the story of a woman we'll call Chrissy B. Chrissy has no formal credentials or higher education experience whatsoever. At the time she began her foray into exploring careers in tech, Chrissy was already older than almost the entire universe of candidates seeking similar junior level positions. And Chrissy had no experience working in the tech field, even in lower skill or very entry level roles. All that was true 2 years ago. But today, Chrissy B is a systems engineer at MasterCard. Now there's quite a gap between those two things. How did she bridge it, and why did she get the opportunity when so many of the typical hiring signals indicated she would be hard-pressed to get a chance? In the end, it was because Chrissy demonstrated, and a forward-thinking employer recognized in her, a number of non-technical skills and attributes that track to likely success. In particular, Chrissy showed admirable amounts of aptitude and passion. Chrissy applied for and was accepted into a free part-time learning program. She put hundreds of hours of study into that program. She worked closely with and communicated clearly to her instruction team. She completed a difficult program and built a portfolio project that highlighted her aptitude. In all aspects, her passion showed through, especially when a prospective employer asked her about how she got where she was. Chrissy also found a chance because an employer saw that she was driven to overcome other sorts of challenges beyond just the challenges of learning itself. Chrissy was widowed during the Gulf War. She raised her children on her own. She demonstrated an uncanny ability to weave in the monumental task of dedicating 25 hours a week to learning a new career skill while also deftly managing life, family, and an existing full-time job. As for that job, well, while it had nothing to do with tech, it was another reason why Chrissy was able to break through. Working as a loan processor for an online mortgage company didn't give Chrissy a leg up on technical skills. It did show her employer that she had relevant workplace skills, communication skills, problem-solving capacity, and first-hand knowledge of how a business runs. Those things would separate Chrissy from other candidates who were fresh out of school. And while Chrissy is a unique person with a unique story, we've seen over and over again that employers with an eye toward addressing the profound talent gap they face are using other non-technical skills as a key means of finding bright, hardworking technologists to move them forward. And that brings me to my third and final lesson. The future stars of your tech team are already on your tech team. Consider these conditions. The traditional challenges aren't creating enough graduates with the skills a company needs. Or the skills a company needs are so niche that there have never been enough people with the skills to satisfy the company's need. At the same time, the company has people who've proven to be good employees, but whose skills are less in demand or create less value for the company. Of course, it's easier said than done, but sophisticated employers are doing great work at reskilling or upskilling their workers to move them into technology roles or into higher value technology roles. I want to share a couple of really good examples of reskilling done well. First was from Comcast in Philadelphia. One of the realities of Comcast's business is that they have a huge customer service workforce and installation workforce, something like 50 or 60,000 employees in those roles. On the other hand, they have about 10,000 people who work on, build, and support their applications. As customer service roles are increasingly automated, reducing the need for those workers, and as more of their service delivery happens through digital delivery, Comcast finds themselves heavy on one side and light on the other. Comcast's solution, as you might guess, was to find people in the first category who are a great fit for jobs in the second category, then quickly give them the skills to move into that job. To me, the real beauty of this work was in the deliberate and comprehensive way they went about identifying and accepting employees for the program. They found the right people, gave them the right skills, put them in the right position to succeed in a great new role in the company. That led to all of the first class of this program completing the course and moving into applications roles. Similar but slightly different is an ongoing upskilling initiative at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. If you're not familiar, that's a Department of Defense intelligence agency with thousands of employees who interpret and operationalize satellite and other image and geospatial data. There, a shift in agency philosophy was taking many key applications functions that had traditionally been performed by contractors and moving them in-house. To do that, they needed to skill up lots more staff to do that work. Of course, there are a lot of accompanying challenges when working within the intelligence world, with security clearance and other concerns, and with a need for technical skills that are much harder to find. So NGA identified agency employees with other related technical skill sets and subject matter expertise, and they worked with a third party to develop a 13-week full-time program that allows them to use their existing expertise with an added new layer of GIS DevOps piled on top. A great way to make use of the people you have to quickly address the changing technical needs of a multi-billion-dollar agency. So those are my three broad lessons, and I'll repeat them. 1, skills at hire are important. Skills at hire plus 1 year are more important. 2, even for tech roles, non-technical skills and attributes are a key differentiator. And 3, the future stars of your tech team are already on your team. Now, as I begin to wrap up, I thought I wanted to share one other set of final insights. In particular, I want to share a little bit about what I see as the broad characteristics that are shared by companies like the ones I mentioned today, which are doing really innovative things in tech talent. Start at the top. Almost all of these organizations are working through a diversity and inclusion lens. These companies and employers recognize that if we're gonna address the tech talent gap that vexes us, we're gonna have to open up the top of the tech career funnel to a much wider range of people from a much wider range of demographics and backgrounds. It's just necessary. 2, all of these companies that are doing innovative work demonstrate a diminished emphasis on rigid requirements and credentials. One thing was probably clear in my examples. None of these companies were doing innovative tech talent work by insisting that prospective technologists were in possession of some magic piece of paper. Companies that are de-emphasizing those things are doing better and finding more people. 3rd, all of these employers view investments in training not as a cost center to be eliminated, but as an investment in the talent supply chain that has measurable returns. These companies and organizations recognize that wise spending on skills can be recouped many times over if you commit to it and do it right. Finally, all of these organizations demonstrate a willingness to think creatively and holistically about what they define as job readiness. This, I think, is critical. It's perhaps the most important one. These innovators are looking at the world, and instead of saying, what is it about this person I can point to that keeps them out of a tech job? Innovators are saying, let me see if I can find in this person one of the things I know will make her a great technologist. We think that's the right path. It's been a great pleasure to be with you today and to share our views on developing a tech workforce. And I'm really excited for the Q&A. I look forward to your questions. And I'm going to invite you now for real-time Q&A to please switch over to the session live stream. Thanks very much. Take care.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to Developing a Skilled Workforce Lessons from the Field with Jeff Mazur. Jeff is the Executive Director of LaunchCode. My name is Leah Freeman. I am lucky enough to work with Jeff at LaunchCode. So I will be moderating this session. Thanks for joining us. And if you do think of a question, feel free to go ahead and drop it into Whova. We do have a few questions in Whova right now. So we will go ahead and jump in and get to those. How are you today, Jeff?
Good, Leah. Thank you.
All right. Well, the first question in Whova, this is a great one. Jeff, can you tell us what the difference is between going through LaunchCode and getting a certification in computer science elsewhere?
Yeah, sure. So at LaunchCode, we're really focused on providing skills and training that's very, very focused on the precise skills that are going to be needed for someone to step into a job right away. So unlike a degree program or something that's more credentials focused, where oftentimes there's a lot more that accompanies getting that credential, and oftentimes it's a much longer process, which is sometimes focused more on learning more academic components of computer science. We've sought to build a curriculum that is really focused on practical skills that people need their first day on the job so they can go in and be effective. And I think it's worth noting that both are powerful and important tools, and we think there's a place for both. But I think LaunchCode is specifically designed for people who are interested in really a job training approach to careers in software development and web development and computer programming. Can I come in and over the course of 13 weeks or 24 weeks or 43 weeks, get the skills in that brief period that I'm going to need to step into a job and be able to be competent on day 1 or day 15 or whatever the case may be. And so we're really focused on that, which I think is a key core difference between LaunchCode and really any highly credential focused program.
Great, and this question is similar because we do know that there are a lot of other free opportunities to learn these tech skills out there. What does it look like to compete, cooperate, or coexist with some of the other cheap or free training alternatives? Some examples are Coursera, Udemy, and just, Googling how to code on YouTube.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think I like the way the questioner put it when they said coexist, because I really think that's what it is. I really don't think of it as competition. I think if we think about the magnitude of the challenge, some of which I shared via statistics in the presentation, we see that the gap is huge. And what we think that means at LaunchCode is not that we've identified the sole solution that is going to fill the gap. We have one corner of a solution that's going to require lots of people finding the right pathway to technology for them. And I think many of the entirely free and kind of solo programs that were mentioned there, the Udemys and the Coursera of the world, is a great tool for many people who already know like what the pathway looks like and just know they need to get skills A, B, C, and D for them to get on that pathway and get to a job. But I think there's a whole other universe of people out there who we really need to tap into and who we need to move into technology, who are not going to find their path using those tools that are out there that they're going to have to navigate on their own. I oftentimes think of the person who would be a really, really great fit to become a software developer, but doesn't know that they're a great fit for it. And I think that person needs a much different thing. They need something that goes beyond just ticking off the skills in the box. They need a program and an opportunity that's really going to give them the supports and the community they need to feel as though this is a space they're going to belong. And once they have that, then I think you can figure out filling the boxes on all the other particular skills. But I think it's a very hard thing to get that sense of belonging, that sense of community. And when they get to that moment, if it's in a program like LaunchCode, where they've got a cohort of learners around them, where they feel as though they've reached their limit and they failed, they have a group of people to turn to and to look at and to see that everyone is struggling in the same way. And I think that's very much not true of many of the other free opportunities to learn entirely online that are out there. Oftentimes people can get to that tough spot and they say, you know what, this isn't for me, I can't do it. And this is where, this is the end of the line for me. And I think we can't have that if we want to bring as many people into this field as we know we need to.
Yeah, so true. And you touched on the community aspect of LaunchCode, but another thing that I really think sets LaunchCode apart from these free resources is just really making sure the skills that we're teaching are so tailored to what the industry needs at the time. So how do you get companies involved, especially when you're thinking about the apprenticeship process and just making sure LaunchCoders are a perfect fit for those companies?
Yeah, sure. And I think that, I'll answer that more broadly than just in the LaunchCode context. I think any organization, be it nonprofit or otherwise, that's seeking to work in this space has to grapple with that question. And I would cite really three key things that are critical to being able to engage employers and make sure that you have what they need. And I think that the first is really around being responsive to what the needs of employers are. Now, everybody's going to say that they're responsive, but I think it actually has to be in a way that the organization has to be able to move quickly to actually deliver on the particular peculiar needs of that employer on a pretty fast timeline. So at LaunchCode, for us, that's meant, as employers have needed it, trying to embrace more niche technologies and skills and platforms, whether it be mainframe platforms or low-code platforms like Pega or ServiceNow, or things like geospatial DevOps, which I talked a little bit about in the presentation. You have to be able to be responsive, and you can't be very dogmatic about what the technology is that you want to work in. Just say, no, we really like this technology and we want to do just that. You have to be more responsive. I think the second thing that I point to is that, really these programs like ours, or like any other similarly situated program, are going to be successful only to the degree that they have solutions available for employer partners that are available now or very soon. It's not enough in most instances to say, yeah, I think we can help you with this, but it's going to take 18 months. That, I think, is not serving the marketplace in a way that's going to feel good and responsive to employers. So I think you have to be able to move quickly. And then I think the other thing is really being clear about expectations. And that oftentimes sounds like the easiest part, but it can be the hardest part. I mean, we have to be clear about the fact that at LaunchCode, for instance, we know that employers out there are really starved for people who have 2, 3, 5 years experience in this space, and that's a valuable space to work in. Well, hey, at LaunchCode, that just can't be what we do. We're not going to create someone who has 3 years of experience. It's not possible. And so we know, though, that we can be responsive to, and we can be clear about expectations with our employers. And I think that's true for many programs. We can bring you people who are talented and have aptitude and are driven to succeed. They're going to need probably another 30, 45, 60 days of additional learning and additional skilling before they feel the precise need that you require. But that's the world that we're living in here. Again, harkening back to those statistics that we looked at, if we just wait for people to come to us fully formed and have these skills already in these roles, you're not going to find them. You're not going to find them in the volume that you need. And so being clear about those expectations is a great way for an organization like ours provides and what an employer needs to really meet in the middle in a way that can fill this gap.
Yeah, that's great. And we only have a few minutes left, but I do really want to get into this. We say we look for passion, drive, and aptitude in candidates. Is that really measured?
Yeah, I think it's hard, right? And I think the LaunchCode experience is, there are measures you can use for aptitude, and those tools are all imprecise, right? And we use mechanisms, HackerRank, logic, problem-solving tests to try and get a beat on someone's aptitude. It's not 100%, but you got to be in the ballpark and understand that this person has the baseline foundational readiness and aptitude to be successful in a program like ours. The other pieces are even, I think, less precise, but you spend a lot of time refining them. And for us, that's really about asking people questions about their own experience and helping understand what is it about this person's experience that demonstrates their passion to learn about technology and work in technology. And those stories come to the surface pretty quickly where people have that genuine passion, people who are driven to take things apart and put them back together again, who are driven and passionate about learning everything they can put their hands on about technology and coding and software development. So that's the passion piece. And then the drive, we really try and dig deeply into what is it about this person and their history and their lived experience that tells us they are someone who overcomes challenges when those hurdles get put in their path, be it life challenges, work challenges, any sort of challenges, health challenges. We think that those things are critical, not just to have the kind of psychological makeup to be successful in our program, but that are going to make someone a really good employee working in this space too. When we know the problems are sometimes hard to sit with and you have to leave them and come back to them and demonstrate stick-to-itiveness on the job in order to push through. And so trying to identify for those things on the front end are really, really core to LaunchCode's model and LaunchCode's ethos. And again, they're imprecise tools, but when someone has that passion, when someone has that drive and explains the thing that they did to get through these really long odds at some point in their life and succeed, that I think speaks directly to someone's likelihood of success in a program like ours and on the job down the road.
Thank you, Jeff. Lots of talented people out there, and we're so glad LaunchCode is here to connect them with employers who need them. Thank you, everyone, for attending this live Q&A session. This session has concluded, but please feel free to stick around on Whova. Go ahead and visit the exhibitor booths. You can even check out LaunchCode there. Thank you so much. Have a good day.